Here we go. It's time for the Rob Staton podcast, all brought to you by Superior Linen Service, family owned and operated since 1926. Superior Linen Service committed to delivering the highest quality products and service to the greater Puget Sound area. Get your free quote today at suplinen.com or give them a call 253-383-2636. They finally put you away, right? You went to the insane asylum. Finally, they locked you up in a padded room. It's about time London responded to your anarchy.
Yes, I'm in a padded cell here in the I'm in the second city, Puck, as it is known here in England, of Birmingham. Ooh. So this is not Birmingham, Alabama. This is Birmingham, England.
Similar, I would assume.
Well, the weather's probably a little different. It's practically freezing in England this week, so it's probably very different weather-wise. But yeah, they've locked me away for some bad Seahawks takes, I think.
Yeah, a bad Seahawks takes. All right, we're going to get into a lot of it. We'll talk about the OC search, defensive cap casualties. If there's going to be guys that they're going to trim the fat off of there on the defensive side. I want to ask you about Byron Murphy's first season. Your take on that one. Tariq Woolen, what to do as he's going into the final year of his contract. And Mel Kiper's released his first mock draft. God, it's mock draft season. You love mock drafts. You do mock drafts all the time. You wrote about Geno and Pete with the Raiders. That's fascinating. And then there's a nugget that came out from Albert Breer today that we got to talk about in regards to the OC search. So we'll get to all that. We'll try to get to all of it here in the next 25, 30 minutes. All right, let's start with the OC search. Hank Fraley came back in for another interview. So he, along with, Kubiak got a second one in person. That was what Garofolo told me last week, where he said he's in the driver's seat for it. They also brought in the whiz kid from the Vikings as well. And so where are we at right now? Do you have a personal preference who you want? Or you're just like, well, it doesn't matter, just get the right guy?
Yeah, I have to say I'm quite intrigued by the names they've come up with. I didn't want some retread who's had 100 jobs, has not really done anything. You know, people were clamoring for Brian Schottenheimer again, and thank goodness it looks as if the Dallas Cowboys are going to appoint him as their head coach for some reason.
Unbelievable.
I didn't want to go down that path. You know, I wanted something different. I don't think the fact that Ryan Grubb was not a success means you should be risk averse, or at least to the extent that you feel like you can't go for somebody who's not that experience. So I think it's a good mix. You know, you've got Clint Kubiak, who's been around a lot of good coaches, who is an interesting candidate. You've this Grant Yadinsky, who is 28 years old. You know, if everybody who's been around him says that he's something a bit special. So I like the idea of giving someone like that a try. And then you've got Hank Fraley, who is a very different candidate who, you know, if you want to prioritize fixing your offensive line, then he would be the kind of person that you would imagine you would bring in to do that. So I'm happy, Paul, whoever they go with, to give it a go. I'm intrigued by all of the candidates. I don't think there was ever a home run hire. Right. So I think the broad search that has been led has been a good thing.
You sent me this note. It's an interesting little nugget from Albert Breer from Sports Illustrated, where he wrote in a little like a news and notes segment, Seahawks OC situation is an interesting one. They could consider splitting up the job. So one thing is Breer writes to consider is that they bring in Hank Fraley, who they like, who is the offensive line coach with the Lions, bring him in as the offensive coordinator, but specifically works with the running game. And then he would hire a passing game coordinator, and the name that Breer threw out was Scott Turner of Vegas. So splitting up the role, having a passing game coordinator, bringing in, Hank Fraley as the offensive coordinator, but he's really more the run guy, and then kind of splitting up the job. What do you think of that idea? Do you like that?
I think people have perhaps forgot outside of Seattle that the Seahawks have already done this. They had Darrell Bevell.
That's right.
And Tom Cable. And Tom Cable was kind of like the run game guy, the guy who would manage Marshawn Lynch. He was the one person, I think, on the staff that Marshawn Lynch related to. And he looked after that and the offensive line, obviously. And then you had Darrell Bevell, who was the offensive coordinator, but essentially called the plays and looked after the passing game side of things. So this isn't anything really that new to the Seahawks. I could easily see this kind of an arrangement happening. I suppose the question is, who calls the plays? Are you bringing in Hank Fraley in this instance to essentially be a glorified offensive line coach with a better title and maybe a bit more money, and then saying to Scott Turner, you call the plays, you do all of that stuff, And then is Scott Turner the kind of person who can do a good job if that is the arrangement? Because he's been working in Vegas. He had his dad with him in Vegas. So there was Scott and Norv Turner working in Vegas together, which was a little bit strange, given that Norv Turner's not been in and around the game for a long time now. So is he ready to sort of go it alone without his dad sat next to him in the booth? That is an interesting question. So I'm not opposed to that idea. Puck, you and I have spent many, many hours over the last 12 months saying they need to fix the offensive line. If Hank Fraley can fix the offensive line, then I'm down for it. And there's one other thing I would say is, Grant Yudinsky and Clint Kubiak, their blocking schemes, they're from the Shanahan tree. It's all from the same DNA, and that is a zone blocking system which values kind of movement and agility up front. I'm kind of ready to see some power and to see some aggression and to see some people movers up front. So if Hank Fraley is going to come in and acquire those kind of linemen and have that kind of style, I'd probably lean more towards that than a zone blocking scheme.
Yeah, I mean, whoever the candidate is, I love the style of play that Detroit plays offensively. I love that. I just love it. It's fun. It's old school. They get under center a lot more. It's just there's something very appealing about the way they play. Now you've got to have the guys up front to deliver it and the running backs to have that system. But yeah, I like how they do it. I'm not opposed to it because, to your point, which I forgot, they've already done it. It's interesting because I remember at the end of that tenure, there became like this riff. Well, who's calling the plays? Like if Cable wants to run the ball, does he jump over Darrell Bevell and tell him to run the ball? Does Darrell Bevell have autonomy to call the plays? I remember it came to head in the Super Bowl. Like, who the hell called the play? You have three guys there, Cable, Bevell, and then Pete Carroll, and wondering, well, wait a minute, we've got Marshawn Lynch. Why didn't we just run the ball? And then we can never really get a clear answer on that one. I'm not trying to bring up bad memories for all Seahawks fans, but I do. The only thing I could see it being an issue of having like it split is just you don't have one guy doing it. And sometimes I just like having one general. Just you call the plays, it's your offense, go, rather than saying, I don't know if we should run that. I don't know if we should do this. Then it could cause a little bit of an issue. But I don't know.
I'm with you on that. It's a concern, isn't it? Like the idea that you would have two people running an offense is not something we're used to. It may work. It is something that did work for a time in Seattle until it didn't. But I must admit, there is this great idea of having one guy who, in a couple of years, let's say, has been such a success in Seattle that he gets a head coaching job somewhere else. That's the kind of world you live in with this defensive-minded head coach. Maybe that's what they should set out to try and achieve here. And maybe having two people doing it might just lead to a bit of a jumbled mess at times, but I don't know. Hank Fraley seems like a great communicator, by the way, so maybe he can handle this.
Well, it'll be interesting to see because I mean they have to outbid these other teams for him because he's going to have plenty of options, right? Whether it's he goes to Chicago with Ben Johnson, does he stay in Detroit, just become the new offensive coordinator under Dan Campbell? So it's not like it's just an easy decision to pick up and move and go to a completely different organization, but. Oh, I don't know. Come on, Jody. Throw as much money at him as you possibly can. Give him a yacht. Give him one of Paul's old yachts.
I don't think he wants a yacht. I mean, if you want Hank Fraley that badly, I think a great steak dinner might do it as opposed to a yacht.
Okay, John Howie's steak. John, you watch, you listen, you support Puck Sports. Let's give Fraley, that private room you have, John. Let's give Fraley hit that room. Like, this is your room. You get to come here every Friday, no questions asked. Maybe that's it.
There we go.
I mean, that's all it takes.
We've sorted. I'm sorry. You should be the GM.
Yeah, well, that would be great. I'd last a week on the job, a day on the job. Defensive cap casualties. We start looking at the defense and where they may start trimming from. We did this exercise last week or a couple of weeks ago with the offense, Rob. What about the defense? I would assume for many people, I'm going to throw you in there, that Draymond Jones is the first one that comes to mind.
Absolutely. It just hasn't delivered in the slightest. I wish they hadn't restructured his contract because it's going to make it a little bit more expensive to part ways. But if they cut him, they will save $11.5 million. This is the thing about the Seahawks, is that whatever happens moving forward, they've got to fix the offensive line, they've got to invest in quarterbacks, and they've also got to avoid this situation where they have tens of millions of dead money just wasted on players playing somewhere else. So to cut Draymond Jones, it's going to cost them $14 million. That's just dead money they will absorb. So they've got to get out of the habit of doing that. Draymond Jones has got to be in the mix there. I think there's a serious question has to be asked about Geno and Wosu. I suspect they might keep him around, but at $21.2 million for a player who's barely played for you for the last 2 seasons, I think you have to look at that and say, you're better off having an $8 million saving than paying him $21 million. I don't know what the answer to that is. They may well keep him around. They seem to like him. There might be something they can do there, but that's a very expensive player who has not contributed for 2 seasons. I think it's pretty obvious that. By the way, can you do the Roy Robertson Harris lawyer group impression?
Yes, yeah. Welcome to my new law firm. It's Roy Robinson Harris. We represent the finest clients in all the South and America. You got your house broken into? Roy Robinson Harris law firm will take care of you. You got into an accident? Call Roy Robinson Harris.
That's the thing I love about it is it's the Harris.
Harris. It's perfect. He should be when he's done playing, he should open up a law firm. Even if he's not a lawyer, just open it up and pretend to be a lawyer.
Well, he may have that opportunity because he played about 2 snaps in the last 3 weeks. So he $6.6 million with no dead money there. He's a goner. Even if they bring him back on a cheap contract, they're not going to give him $6.6 million. So he's gone. So they're really the main 3, I think. Jones, Nwosu, Roy Robertson Harris. It's whether or not they want to cut Rayshon Jenkins. They can save $5.3 million.
Why wouldn't you, though? What's the point of keeping him around?
I suppose he's $7.8 million cap hit, which is not cheap, but they might. It's how much is it going to cost to replace him, I guess. And that's what they're going to have to weigh up. But there are some savings to be made there. It is a good defensive line draft. So, players like Draymond Jones, they should be able to replace him on the cheap. There's some decent safeties available as well. So they may well have an opportunity to replace some of these guys.
What about Tariq Woolen? He will be going into his last year of his rookie contract. This is when the Seahawks and most teams start negotiating a deal with one of their own. What do you think the future holds for Woolen in the Seahawks?
Well, he's pretty much the most frustrating player that has played in Seattle for a while. and I say that because people can come up with players they don't like or who weren't very good. People say, about Jamal Adams. Well, I think he was just a clown. In the end, I don't think he was particularly frustrating. And then you have Tariq Woolen. And the frustrating thing with him is when he's at his best, Puck, you could easily see him being one of the best cornerbacks in the league. And then when he's at his worst, you want to give him a kick up the arse. Yeah. Like there's some really frustrating games where, he's had teammates, Julian Love, running over to him saying, what are you doing there? On the field, he has games where he's a total liability. And then he has games where you think there aren't many people on the planet who can do what he does. And I am extremely wary of paying this guy because if he's like this now, when he's a late round rookie and has not made significant life-changing money, what is he going to be like if he does that? So I think the Seahawks have 2 options. They either just let him see out his contract, play his final year, and you just benefit from that because you haven't got a lot of quarterback depth for the next 12 months, and then you just play it by ear. And I would lean against, even if he has a great season, not signing him to a massive extension. Or you open up to teams at the combine and go, does anybody want this guy? The problem with that is that if you trade him away, like I said, the Seahawks do not have a lot of cornerback depth right now. But what I would say to that is I thought he did a decent job with Josh Jobe, Mike McDonald. And in Baltimore, they obviously had Marlon Humphreys, but they also just basically filled in the positions otherwise. So if you can say, well, we've got Devin Witherspoon and we can fill in with a couple of other positions, I think they could do that if they did want to trade Tariq Woolen to a team who thinks, we're happy to take a chance on this guy.
Boye Mafe.
No. Well, Boye Mafe's...
Same deal, right? Same situation.
Yeah. Do you agree that he pretty much looks like he's going to be in the good, not great category, that he's never going to reach great?
Right. But you want good. You need good, right? Because good equals depth.
Definitely. So I think what you have to do with Boya Mafe is, again, go into the contract year, see how he plays this year, see if he can take another step. And then if he just basically has the same season that he's had for the last 2 seasons, then I think you have to allow him to hit free agency and then see where you go from there. I don't want to pay. I think if you pay people now like Mafe, you're going to end up paying a great contract for a good player.
Okay.
And I'm always a bit dubious of that. I think they should really reserve paying great players great money.
That's fair. Byron Murphy. I brought this up with Tim Booth and Curtis Crabtree on the Ground Puck podcast on Monday, and I'm just curious your thoughts. You sit back and evaluate the first year of their first round pick. Your reaction to his rookie campaign.
Well, you graded him between the three of you, and I was trying to think when I was listening what my grade was, and I think it's basically like a C+, because this was a player who he did an interview with Marshawn Lynch right at the start of the season and said that his aim was to be Defensive Rookie of the Year, and he's not going to get close to that. I mean, you look at the impact of some people like Jared Verse, and you think, that's a difficult one to swallow because it is not with hindsight. I did a horizontal board and had Jared Verse as one of the best, handful of players in the draft. And then he goes and has a year like that. You think that's exactly what the Seahawks like right now. It's somebody who can complement Leonard Williams and be a game wrecker off the edge. And Byron Murphy did not show that ability. Now, there is plenty of people out there. I don't study it closely enough, Puck, to sort of have any opinion on this. But there's a lot of people out there saying that he did a good job, against the run, that he absorbed double teams and stuff like this. But, when you draft someone 16th overall, you expect maybe a bit more than that.
Yeah.
Can he get to that point? I have to say, watching him on tape at Texas, he was never an amazing pass rusher. He was not someone who was quick swim move, burst into the backfield, sack the quarterback. What he tended to do was get a lot of pressures via blunt force, and he did a good job anchoring and was more of a Grady Jarrett type in college than an Aaron Donald. But I went and had a look last night, and in college, his pass rush win percentage was 19.2%. And there isn't a defensive tackle in college football last season who got anywhere close to that. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that at least the people who studied that area of his game a lot more closely at Texas perhaps felt he was a much more effective pass rusher than I thought, watching just the tape. And therefore, maybe he just needs that bit of time. Grady Jarrett had a bit of a feeling season when he got to Atlanta as a rookie and then took off. So the hope has to be that Byron Murphy will do the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking back. I think Jalen Carter ended up having 6 sacks his rookie season. Murphy's going to finish, what was it, 1.5, I believe?
Yeah.
On the year. It's hard because I don't know what they're trying to and what they're asking him to do. Are they asking him to take on a double team? Are they asking him to take up a certain space to free up other players? And so I don't think he had any wow moments. I mentioned to those guys on Monday, there was the Jalen Carter moment against the Rams in the divisional round where he just took the guard or the center, whoever was blocking him, threw him out of the way, and he sacked Matt Stafford. And that was essentially the game. He ended the game, and for the Eagles win. I know Murphy never had a play like that this year.
No.
But I would also say, hey, they went from 31st in the NFL against the run to 16th. I got to imagine he played a large role in that, of allowing them to improve defensively against the run. But I'm with you. Where they drafted him, what you thought you were getting. And again, he's a rookie. I'm not going to overreact to his first year in the league. But you want a game wrecker, a difference maker. And, certainly in his rookie season, he fell short of that.
The one thing I would say that is perhaps somewhat optimistic is Nnamdi Madubuike, formerly Justin Madubuike.
Sure.
In his first, obviously this was his first year in the NFL, he had 1 sack. Second year, he had 2. Then he started working with Mike McDonald. He got up to 5.5 sacks. And then in his second season with Mike McDonald, the 5.5 became 13 sacks. Now, in the season that's just finished at Baltimore, he went back down to 6.5. So it does seem to me as if Mike McDonald, and we've seen Leonard Williams have an amazing year, it does seem to me that McDonald, the evidence based on Madubuike is that he can get the best out of these players. So if it took him a couple of years, 2 or 3 years to get to his peak, if that happens with Murphy, and he's working with the right head coach to enable him to have that success, I think probably in time we will see a player who justified the pick.
Yeah. I'm hopeful for him, and I'm not down on his rookie year at all. But we'll see what he can do there in year 2. All right. I mean, you love mock drafts. I mean, your website's called SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Mel Kiper has come out with his first one. They call it, it's like a holiday when he releases it. What are the names out there that initially for you at 18 are going to be viable options for Seattle? Just as now. I mean, everything can change, and we can throw names up the board all we want. But give me 2, 3, 4, whatever group of guys that Seattle and their fans should have their eye on at 18.
Before I answer that question, can I ask you what you think of mock drafts? Because I have to say, I do mock drafts. I absolutely hate mock drafts.
What do I think of them? I think they're fun. I know people. I don't put much stock in them at all, but I think it's fun. It's also, I treat it like the preseason poll in college football.
Yeah.
It's worthless, and they shouldn't do it actually, because it taints the season. It overvalues a team early on who's really not that good. They shouldn't really vote until after week 4 or 5. Like the first month of the season, and then they should come out with the poll. But I love it. When I was a kid, I loved getting my Sports Illustrated and looking at the top 25 preseason poll. So that's mock drafts for me, because it never, ever, ever, at least for Seattle, ever ends up being the guy most often than
absolutely.
not. So, but I like people that put them out, because then I just you read up on the players and you get to know the guys and all that. But
I think the thing is someone like Mel Kiper, whatever you think of Mel Kiper, there's absolutely no disputing whatsoever that he puts in the work and that he has contacts. So even though his mock draft that he's put out today or this week will probably have hardly any correct picks, because that's the nature of a mock draft.
Sure.
He puts in the work. The problem that I have is that we're at this time of the year now, Puck, and this is probably just someone who writes about the draft having a good old moan about this. But the vast majority of people who put these out don't do any work. They don't study the players. And when you've kind of studied the players for 3 or 4 months, and you actually take the time to speak to people, to get, people who actually know what they're talking about, to get their opinions, and then you put up a mock draft and someone tells you don't know what you're talking about because this other person's put a mock draft out who spent about 10% of the time studying it makes you want to launch your laptop across the
well, I'm going to tell you, I mean, not like Mel Kiper and not you. I'm going to tell you these other people that put out these mock drafts, I know what they do. And the greatest creation for them is PFF.
Of course.
Because they go to PFF and they do the mock draft simulator. And then it spits out the mock draft, and then that's what I'm telling you. That's what they do.
You're absolutely right.
They base their mock draft on that. And they're like, "Well, this is who I've got going to the Raiders at 6." No, it's what the simulator told you.
The simulators, look, they're a lot of fun. And when you get close,
I like
to the
doing
draft,
it.
They're a lot of fun, man.
And I like to provide chaos, because then I take some rando at wherever the Seahawks pick.
The problem is the minute the boards are so wrong that the simulators will put guys who are going to go in the top 10 at 300, and they'll put guys in the whatever. I've dodged your question long enough about who the Seahawks could be after. I think the thought, I'm going to write an article about it. I've written the article. It's going to come out later this week. Okay. I do think they have to consider the depth at the offensive line is so good that you don't have to take an offensive lineman at 18 or after a small trade down. I think they possibly should if someone like Tyler Booker is there, because Tyler Booker is a plug-in and play left guard. He has been on a trajectory to the NFL since day one. He is exactly the kind of player they need: physical, finisher, great run blocker, unbelievable character, captain, tone setter, leader. He ticks every box. But there is every chance that, say, Cincinnati at 17 will want to draft him as well, and he won't be there at 18. But if he's there at 18, he has to be an option for you. If he's not there, I think you've basically got about 10 interior offensive linemen who are much of a muchness. So you might be able to get one at, say, 50 who is graded the same as someone who you would take at 18 or if you move down. So then you have to think about what are the other options. And there are a lot of good defensive linemen. If you're going to cut Draymond Jones, you have got players who, to give you some different names that people maybe aren't considering as much, you might be able to take someone like Michael Williams might last there because he's had a bit of an injury plagued last season at Georgia. He's very, very talented, a lot of potential there. Jordan Birch at Oregon. People don't really talk about him. Unbelievable size and athleticism, has got the potential to be an excellent player if you develop them right. And I think they've got the coach to develop someone like that to become an excellent player. You've got people like Walter Nolan and TJ Sanders. If Byron Murphy's never going to be that blow up a game pass rusher, perhaps you could pair a TJ Sanders or Walter Nolan with that kind of a player, or a Kenneth Grant, especially if Jaron Reed's not going to come back. Hopefully he will, but if he isn't, then you've got a bit of a hole at defensive tackle there. So I know that people are going, oh, not another defensive lineman, Rob. They need offensive linemen. I'm just sort of saying. And then you've got sort of pass rushers. I'm going to butcher his second name. Princely Umana-Melian, I think it is, at Ole Miss.
Nailed it.
He transferred from Florida. Unbelievable edge rusher, size, length. If they don't have a dominant edge rusher right now, maybe he could be that kind of a guy. And then you have to ask, where is a James Pierce going to go? Where is a Mike Green going to go? Do you look at those players as well? So, yes, a lot of the talk is going to be on offensive linemen. And look, there's a bunch of guys at an offensive line. It's not just Tyler Booker. Let me just give you a couple of those before we could have wrap up this section. These are some of the names I think people need to look out for. Josh Connolly is probably going to have to kick inside to guard. Aggressive, athletic, tone setter, local, brilliant. Donovan Jackson at Ohio State. Keep an eye on that guy. Mel Kiper went with Armand Membu. He finishes every run. So, when he's blocking against the run, he sends people to the turf. Great guy to keep an eye on. Wyatt Millam does the same thing at West Virginia. He cannot play left tackle. His feet, he's not got the footwork and the agility to do it. But as a tone-setting guard, he could be excellent. So someone like Wyatt Millam as well. And then, look, I don't know. People keep saying that Will Campbell's going to go in the top 10. I don't think he played well enough to justify that. So how far is someone like that going to fall? How far is someone like Kelvin Banks, who had a bit of a struggle towards the end of the year, had some injuries? How far are they going to fall? There's a few players out there that the Seahawks could target. So I think it's a trenches draft for the Seahawks. I think they can get a really good offensive lineman and a really good defensive lineman with their first two picks.
What's your thoughts quickly on Will Howard at Ohio State?
Will Howard is somebody I've been tracking for a long time. What I've got to remember here is Kansas State effectively moved on from Will Howard.
Yeah.
They were spelling him last year with the guy who started from, I think it's called Avery Johnson.
Yeah. Real quick guy, real twitchy quarterback. Yep.
Really interesting. But they spelled him. So he'd take a series, Avery Jones would take a half. And he was basically shoved out the door from Kansas State and had to move on unless he was going to turn pro, and he didn't. He's gone to Ohio State. During the regular season, frustrating as heck to watch. During the playoffs, he's kind of lit things up. Now, I like him as a person. He seems like, I just love his attitude and his character. He's definitely got an arm. He's athletic. He's got the size. Does he have that special quality, though, Puck? Does he have that sort of starter in the NFL? And that's the problem with this draft class. You've got a lot. You can make an argument for him, Jackson Dart, Quinn Ewers, Milrow. You can make all of the guys, Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders. Oh, they do this, they do that. How many of these guys are special? And when you're looking for a quarterback, you're looking for special, and I'm not sure there's any of them in this class.
What do you think about? You wrote about it, SeahawksDraftBlog.com. I love it because it's just a great hypothetical, but actually could turn into a reality. Pete Carroll gets the job with the Raiders, calls his good buddy John Schneider and says, "You know what? Why don't you trade me Geno Smith?"
Well, listen, Pete was the biggest Geno guy. Geno Smith was at the press conference when Carroll announced, it didn't announce he was going, but it said he was saying his goodbyes and looked very emotional. And I'd always felt that Carroll was the Geno guy, Schneider was the Drew Lock guy after the Russell Wilson trade. So I think they were clearly open-minded about trading Geno a year ago, whether people want to accept that or not. That's why the quid pro quo tweet from Adam Schefter came out saying, hey, great value for the Seahawks or anybody who wants to trade for him. And there just wasn't a market there. And now you look at this and you think if Pete ends up at Vegas, and there's a lot of buzz that Pete's going to end up at Vegas, he doesn't have a quarterback. And he's probably not going to get one in this draft. Perfect bridge. Geno Smith. I think they have 2 picks in round 3, Puck. Why don't they give the Seahawks one of those picks? I think they have 70 and 71 or something like that.
Yeah, I'll look at it. Go ahead.
Give the Seahawks one of those picks. You move on from Geno Smith. And look, that'll be painful for a lot of Seahawks fans. And I'm no doubt going to get a lot of hate for saying that. But you draw a line under it. I think the Seahawks are going to review their options, because if they can't come to terms on a team-friendly deal with Geno Smith, they're going to have to They'll know by the combine whether a team-friendly arrangement with Geno is possible. They're going to know whether Sam Darnold's going to hit the market at that point and whether they want to pursue that. They're going to have a better idea of what if they want to draft somebody. And this is the GM who moved on from Matt Hasselbeck, who moved on from Matt Flynn, who moved up from Russell Wilson. Are we honestly saying he's not prepared to take a risk and move on from Geno Smith? When they traded Russell Wilson, they had Geno Smith and Drew Lock on their roster.
Yeah, they had no plan.
He's prepared to take a risk and have no obvious plan of direction. So I think it's a possibility that Pete and Geno could be reunited in Vegas.
They've got obviously the 6th overall pick. They've in round 2, 37th, 2 in round 3, at least according to this website, the NFL mock draft database. I'm just going to take their word for it. It is the 68th and 73rd overall.
So they've got the stock to do it, and they've got huge cap space. I think they've got the second most cap space at the moment, and they've got the most for next year. So if Geno wants a big extension and wants some commitment and some more money, the Raiders are in an excellent place to give it him. Not saying it's definitely going to happen. The Seahawks could definitely do a deal with Geno, and it all comes back and it's great. But Geno's going to have to compromise here, and if he's unwilling to compromise, he could find himself taking on Patrick Mahomes and Bo Nix and Justin Herbert for the next couple of years instead.
That's good. It's good. I like it. The Rob Staton Show is all brought to you by Superior Linen Service, family owned and operated since 1926. Get a free quote today, suplinen.com. Give him a call, 253-383-2636. Get all of Rob's work up at SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Video content is on his YouTube channel at Rob Staton Football. Follow him on X at Rob Staton. Full episode here up on YouTube. Search Puck Sports. When you're there, please subscribe on the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify. Get there and please rate 5 stars. Only 5 stars. You can't go less than 5 stars. And you must write a 1,000 word review thanking for all the great work we do here. Okay. You can find it there and, of course, up at pucksports.com. Rob, appreciate the time. We'll chat next week.
Anytime, man. Thanks.